Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, have you heard the catchphrases, the best way to learn is by doing, or the best way to learn is to teach? Do you agree with them? If you agree with these ideas, where have you seen them applying to your life? When have you felt like you've learned better by doing or by teaching? I think I can understand how it works. I've had experience with it myself. For example, cooking. To take an easy example, looking at a recipe, I can understand how to cook, I can understand the concept of it, but it's not until you actually do it that you actually learn how to cook. Makes sense, right? So you cook a recipe, you think you've learned the recipe, or you learned a way of cooking, but then you try to teach someone else how to make that recipe, how to make that food. It's amazing how much more you understand about the process of cooking by trying to teach someone else. Now, watching their process of understanding and their questions broadens and deepens your understanding of performing the task of making this food. Does that make sense to you? Have you had that experience? I have. It was amazing. There was something that I thought I knew, and then I tried to teach it to somebody else, and I realized, oh, wait a second. I kind of knew, but now I really know. It applies to languages as well. I've been studying Italian. I love Italian. So I was studying it on my own, and if you've ever tried to learn a foreign language, you know that you need to use it to really learn it. So I went to an academy, a class, and I studied and practiced with the class, and that helped a lot. It helped a lot. But then I didn't have as much time to go to that class, and I kept practicing on my own and trying to learn on my own. And I made progress, but I reached a plateau that felt more like an impenetrable brick wall. Like there was a barrier that I just couldn't get through. And I started to even lose confidence with the language I had already learned because of that feeling of reaching a barrier and not being able to continue forward. So I tried teaching. I found a small group of people. There were like 4 people. I wasn't teaching classes at a school. I'm not nearly proficient enough for that. But I was teaching some people. Let's call them students. I was teaching students who had never had contact with Italian, and I was giving them my base understanding of Italian. And I can't tell you how much that helped solidify my ability to use the language and my ability to grow into the language, in a sense. Learning by doing is wonderful. Learning by teaching is even more wonderful, even more useful, even more helpful. And we're going to be exploring these ideas as they relate to living an intentional life. Can you see how doing and teaching both help us in our understanding and in our learning how to live intentionally? Well, this week's Tarot and Oracle spread is going to help us explore that topic. So friends, if you've been here before, you know that I'm about to show you the tarot spread. So here it is. This is a beautiful spread, is it not? If you're curious about the decks and who created them, as usual, there will be a short clip at the end of this video that tells you that information, who made them, what the names of the decks are. And as usual, there will also be links in the description box below if you want to go and look for them, look at them yourselves, and perhaps even buy one or all of them. Yes, they are all still available to my knowledge, and there will be links. I don't get any money if you go and purchase using those links, just to let you know. They're just there for your convenience. So, we just saw the spread. Again, a gorgeous spread. And if you are new here, let me give you a brief overview of what you just saw. There were 3 cards in the center. Those are from an oracle deck, and they give us the main idea, the topic, the thesis statement for this spread. And around those 3 cards, there were groupings of cards in 4 areas. Yeah? In each of those groupings, there was one inquiry card, a card with a question. And that question was answered by 2 tarot cards, one from 2 different decks. So what we will do is we'll go into the thesis statement first, and then we'll explore the questions and the answers to those questions with tarot. Are you all ready? Let's dive into the oracle cards. These cards are exquisite. The more I use this oracle deck, the deeper and the more beneficial I'm finding the ideas, the statements, the messages that this oracle deck gives me on a daily basis. I don't use this deck only for this spread. I use it on a daily basis as well during this lunar cycle. It's a beautiful oracle deck, and it really is insightful. So what did we get? We had 3 cards, like I told you. Reading them from left to right, we had Mountain Spirit, then we had Play Your Music, and then we had Awaken. Beautiful cards. Let's start with the Mountain Spirit. And let me give you a little bit of a cultural background. This deck is based on a Korean American woman's experience of her learning and living the life of a Korean shaman in the United States. So she's using her Korean shamanistic tradition to create this oracle deck. And the Korean shaman tradition is a beautiful tradition. And Korean shamans use the word shaman. It's a tradition that comes from the very, very northeastern part of what we call Eurasia. Yeah, it probably originated from the Baikal Lake region, and as the people migrated east up through perhaps Siberia, then through Mongolia, and then down into Korea, and there was another group of people who I believe moved into the area between Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, that area. There's a group that has a tradition that is similar in flavor to the Korean shaman. Now, each of them developed separately, and there are great differences. But the Korean shamanistic tradition traveled from the Baikal Lake area, again, through Siberia down into Korea, far before Buddhism arrived in Korea. It's probably one of the oldest traditions, and it may be, and probably is, a matrilineal line, a matrilineal society, a matriarchal society's spiritual practices and spiritual beliefs. Now, why am I talking so much about this? Because the first card is Mountain Spirit, which is Sanshin. Now, Sanshin in Korea, at present, you can see portraits of Sanshin, the mountain spirit, or the mountain god, actually, the mountain god or mountain spirit in Buddhist temples. Now, when Buddhism arrived in Korea, they absorbed elements from the native spiritual practices. And one of the elements that Buddhism absorbed into itself to make it more familiar and more comfortable to the people living here was the idea of Sanshin. And the mountain spirit, the mountain god, has a portrait in every temple I've seen in a separate building. So there's the building with the main Buddhas, and then there's a side small building for people to go and pray to Sanshin, to the mountain spirit. And at present, the Sanshin are all represented as old men. However, there are indications that there is an older tradition of the Sanshin being a woman, Sanshin Harmony, the mountain spirit grandmother, the mountain grandmother goddess, which indicates to me and other people that the tradition is actually one of a matriarchal society with instead of a male overarching deity, a female overarching deity. And that deity, for Koreans, is the mountain god. One of them. There's also a more generating, an initial, the primary, the first goddess that created everything. And I talked about her a couple of weeks ago. There are two expressions of her. One is a triple goddess, and one is a unitary goddess. And I'll put the names in the cards below, and not in the cards below, in a caption below, because it slipped my mind. But anyways, so there's also the Sanshin, this mountain goddess. And sometimes, at present, the mountain god, a male figure. And this card is reminding us to seek guidance. How can we seek guidance? One way for us to seek guidance is to connect with nature. To get away from our human architecture and human constructs and go back out into nature. Why? Have you noticed that when you go out into nature, in the quiet, away from, especially from cities and structures, but also sometimes away from other people, or at least away from large crowds. When you go out into nature, you notice, at least I've noticed, that I open more after time. It takes a little bit. It's not going to be an instant opening, but I feel myself opening more. My muscles relax. My mind relaxes in a sense. And the more I open, the more receptive I become. Receptive to insights and inspirations and information, both from the eternal nature that I am, from the divine creator of all that is, from maybe Sanshin, and also from my own depth of the collective unconscious, my own personal unconscious. Now, I'm open to receiving ideas, understanding, concepts, insights, inspirations from all of these sources that I am often cut off from, or at least my connection is limited when I'm in the middle of my daily life, in the middle of a city, in the middle of my office, for example. So this card is reminding us one way to open up to guidance is to go out into nature. Could be a mountain, could be a forest, could be the ocean. It's a card that reminds us that non-physical consciousness, all of those aspects that I mentioned, especially our eternal nature and the divine creator and Sanshin, that the non-physical consciousness is here to guide us all of the time, and all we need to do is be open to it. It's here to support us as well, because we get insight, we get inspiration, and sometimes we get scared. Sometimes we get frightened or unsure or uncertain, or our self-confidence is shaken. Have you ever noticed that? I remember one opening where my confidence just blossomed and exploded, but it's not always that way. Sometimes you get this insight and you think, yes, and then you think, oh my God, how, what, when, where, yeah? The realities of our daily lives start to seep back in, and we start getting on shaky ground. So this is when we can also remember that we are supported and we are guided at all times. And all we really want to do is be open to it. If we're open to it, it's there. It's also here to remind us that guidance can come from other people. Yeah, other people can sometimes be our guides too. It can come from a human. It can come from a healer or from a mentor of some kind. It can come from a counselor. Now, perhaps a trained counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a life coach, someone with training, a spiritual guide. Yeah. We can get guidance and insights and help from people as well, because of the things that they know, but also because they are also open to the possibilities of insights and inspirations from the divine, from Sanshin, from nature. And they could be the transmitters of that to us. Perhaps in clearer form, perhaps an easier to understand form for us at that time. So we have access to all of this potential guidance and information and inspiration and insight. And all of this is perhaps guided by and nourished by and nurtured by Sanshin, the mountain goddess. And when you saw that card, you saw those mountains and how open they are. And how that openness can be ours. We can be that open if we allow ourselves. And perhaps when we're not as open, we can be a little bit open to hearing words from other human beings. Can you hear my words? Are they helping you open at all? The next card is play your music. Because all of those insights and those understandings that we receive when we open to either nature, to the divine, or to other people, to guidance, counseling from other people, all of that is wonderful. All of that is wonderful, but if we don't absorb it, if we don't digest it, if we don't internalize it and then make it our own and then express it, it's useless information for the most part. It's a mind game. It's just something to play with. It's good, interesting, understanding information, but if it doesn't affect us and it doesn't help us to express ourselves and to be differently in the world, we have cut off that potential for our own growth, for our own understanding. So we play our music. We let this information, this insight, this inspiration be absorbed within us. And as we absorb it and we digest it and we make it our own, we begin to express it. We share our voice. We share our music, our gift to the world. We show up into the world as the fullness of ourselves, as it has been influenced and as we have grown from what we have learned. We also want to remember that we're playing our music as part of a symphony. Now, we're not doing a solo. This physical universe is a co-creative creation. It's a co-creative manifestation. We're not playing our instruments alone. We're playing as part of a complete symphony. Each of us has our own melody or our own line of music, and our lines of music all mesh together to become the fullness of this symphony that this physical universe is, that our life experience is, that the life experience of the humans on this planet are. We play our music, and we play our music in symphony. We also remember that, what am I trying to remember? I'm trying to remember that our music, blending with others, creates a magnificent new piece. And that magnificent new piece also affects us. I don't know if you've ever been a singer or been part of a chorus or played an instrument with other players of instruments. But if you have, you have had this experience, I'm sure, where your voice integrates with the voices of others, or your instrument integrates with the sound of the instruments of other people. And there's this revelation of, oh, that's what this is. And that affects you. And that affects your understanding of the music, of your experience of the music, of your experience of this physical reality. Has that ever happened to you? It's a wonderful feeling. Singing in harmony with others, when it blends right, when it blends beautifully, it's becomes something completely different. It's more than the sum of its parts. And that's also what this card is here to remind us of. As we play with others in this symphony, we create something that is more than the sum of its parts. And that is a revelation for us. That teaches us as well. And so there's this cycle of I learn, it's not incorporate, it's not ingest, it's I manifest, I incarnate. That's the word I was looking for. I incarnate what I've learned. It becomes part of me. I incarnate what I have learned, and as I incarnate it, I begin expressing it. As I express it, it goes out into the world, and it creates new things, and then those new things are a revelation for me. And those new things teach me, and that new information comes in, and I manifest that within, I digest that within, and I incorporate it, and again, that word is gone from me. What is it? I incarnate it. I incarnate it, and then I express it again. It's a cycle of building, evolutionary growth that we are part of by participating in this cycle. And we learn from Spirit. We incarnate what we learn. And because we've incarnated it, because it has become part of us, when we express in the world, we express differently. And as we express differently, we create differently. And as we create differently, something new and wonderful is also created in the physical universe. And that new creation also informs us of new ideas, new understandings. And it's beautiful. And then the next card is basically the Shaman card. Yeah, it's called Awaken. And in this card, the card before, just so you know, the instrument the woman was playing was a gayagum. The gayagum is a stringed instrument similar to, part of the category of mandolins. It's one of the East Asian mandolins, and it arrived in Korea probably in the 5th to 6th century AD, probably through China. And it's similar to the instrument in Japan, which is the koto, and suddenly that word is gone from me. Okay, lots of words disappearing from me today. But there's an instrument that is very famous around the world in Japan. Now, most people believe that the Japanese received that instrument, or the idea for that instrument, from China. My personal belief is that because that instrument was developed in Japan just a couple of centuries later than Korea, that probably what happened is it came down into Korea and then from Korea moved to Japan. Now, most Japanese scholars are not going to acknowledge that. Most Japanese scholars will not acknowledge most of the cultural items, most of the culture that was transmitted from Korea to Japan because of the rivalry between these two countries. However, I believe that this Gayagum eventually migrated to Japan and became the Japanese version, which is now fairly well known around the world. So that was the Gayagum. Now we're moving into the third card, the Shaman. And what you see here is a fairly modern looking Korean shaman. Usually a woman, also men. Men and women wear the same clothes. They become non-binary. I mean, I think that's what the modern interpretation of what the shaman becomes when the shaman becomes a shaman. Now, the man loses their maleness and gains some femininity. Now, the female loses some of their femininity and gains some masculine energy as well. Now, the person becomes a fairly non-binary person. Now, they might not describe themselves as non-binary. However, my understanding of the way that the shaman interact is a fairly non-binary way of expressing in the world. So, usually women, sometimes men. And the card is named Awaken. Now, awakening to one's spiritual tradition, perhaps. Opening our eyes to the truth around us is another idea for this card. The truth. What is the truth? The truth of this physical universe being an expression of the non-physical universe. We can choose to see the world differently, as if a veil had been lifted from our eyes. The veil perhaps of material rationalism, rational materialism, that all that this universe is a physical manifestation, and what we think of as maybe consciousness is something that, an effect of something that developed out of the physical universe. That is rational materialism. Yes. However, that's a veil. And the veil lifts and we see that the base is consciousness. The base is the divine and the non-physical. And the physical emanated from the non-physical. It's a card that reminds us that our old beliefs are being challenged. That this is a time for our growth, for our evolution. And also that we are saved, that we are guided. Now, similar to the Sanshin card, the Mountain Spirit card. We are safe, we are being guided, we are being held by the non-physical, by the divine, and by also the eternal nature that we are. It's a card to remind us to welcome that support as well. Because most of the time, I don't know if it's true for you, have you noticed this for you? We reject the help and support that is available to us because we're so focused on what we have to do and the problems that we're experiencing and the pain that we're feeling and the suffering that we're creating for ourselves. We get wrapped up in that, and because we're wrapped up in that, without our own knowing it, we reject the help and support that is available to us, both from other people, but even perhaps more importantly, from the non-physical, from the divine, from our own eternal natures. It's a card to remind us to stay open and mindful as much as we possibly can, to receive clarity and direction, and support, and nurturing. And so now, do you see how these cards create a cycle? Now, first we have Sanshin, open to the wisdom, the knowledge, the enlightenment possible from the mountain goddess, from the mountain god, from nature, and the support available. And then we incorporate that, we manifest that in ourselves, and we play our music, and we teach our music to others. And as we express and as we teach, we create anew. And then we are open to being informed again as the awakened ones. Yeah? We're awakened to more possibilities. We're awakened to the fact that the veil is lifting, is dissolving in front of our eyes. We're acknowledging our relationship with the non-physical and our ability to learn from and evolve through our interaction with and our connection with and our reception of knowledge and wisdom from the non-physical, from the divine, from our eternal nature. And we return to the cycle of absorbing, learning, growing, and expressing, and playing, and teaching, and then absorbing. And it's not okay, now I'm teaching, now I'm learning, now I'm teaching, now I'm learning. It's a process that's happening the whole time, and we are at all points of the cycle at the same time. As we are teaching, at the same time we are learning. As we are expressing, we are also observing and receiving. Does that make sense to you? And that's why doing is one of the greatest teachers. As we do, we express what we have learned. And then we observe and we learn more, and then we express. As we learn, we teach. Sometimes with words, better by our lives. Now, teaching is not only by sitting a student down in front of you and giving verbal lessons or instructions or even showing. The best teaching is by living our lives. So as we have incorporated, as we have digested and manifested what we have learned, and we've let that affect how we are in the world, it's how we are in the world that is our teaching. That is the most profound expression of our teaching. How we be in the world. How we think of the world, but even more, how we be, how we exist in the world. That is our most profound method of teaching. And we do that every second of every day. And then we're still open and we're still learning. This set of cards is deep, profound, and I'm still processing. But as I'm processing, I'm expressing. And as I'm expressing, I'm also learning. So I'm doing this right now with you. So thank you for being present, for me to do this, and for me to learn. Now we have 4 questions being asked of this central set of cards. Let's take a look at the first question. The first question is, what needs to be completed? And I think this question is asking what needs to be completed for me to be able to return to this cycle of opening to learning and then receiving and incorporating and then having that affect the way I exist in the world and teaching and then being open. Yeah? For me to be able to re-enter that cycle fully, what needs to be completed? Or what do I need, or what do I want to allow completion to happen. 2. Was that English? I hope so. So, we have 2 answers to this card. One is the 8 of Cups, one is the 3 of Swords. Neither of them are very happy tarot cards. Let's start with the 8 of Cups, because this image is a little different, is very different from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck with Pamela Coleman Smith's art. In that card, we see 8 cups in the very, very dark night, and a figure walking away from those 8 cups, looking dejected, perhaps, walking away, and there's a river beside them, beside the cups and the figure walking away, and perhaps there's a bridge out in the distance, and it looks like that figure is walking away from this water is emotion, right? This emotional blah mess, whatever that is, walking away from it, crossing the bridge to a castle, their home, returning to their home after some unsettling, dissatisfying, painful experience. Now, this card is interesting because instead of the person walking away from those cups, this person is carrying their cups away from the 2 women. They're people in women's clothes, Joseon period, women's clothes in the background. And this is a figure wearing Joseon period, male clothes. So this, let's call this person a man. It could be a woman dressed in male clothes. Who knows? But let's call this person a man for convenience, is running away with 8 cups. Now, usually, this is the card of disappointments, withdrawal. And we get that in this. Yeah, this person is withdrawing from the 2 women. Detachment from what's happening in the background. And it can be a spiritual journey. So maybe we need to reinterpret what the meaning of the cups is in this card, in this deck. Instead of the cups being the emotional turmoil, the disappointment, the heartbreak. Instead of that, I think these cups are the emotions that the person wants to carry with them. And the dissatisfaction is expressed by the 2 women in the background talking to each other. And this person is removing themselves from what's going on behind them and going off to live their own life, their own truth, with their own emotional fulfillment, carrying their own cups with them, leaving the cups of the other people behind. That's what I get out of this card. So this is a little bit more of maybe a spiritual journey. Now leaving the others behind and going on their own spiritual journey. So, what needs to be completed? What needs to be completed is perhaps our detachment from what might be distracting us. What needs to be completed is our leaving behind what is no longer serving us. And also carrying forward what is serving us, what will help us in the forward, but being willing to leave stuff behind and move forward, to move on, to withdraw perhaps also from society. Because time alone is going to help us in getting back into the cycle, to opening up to the cycle of receiving and expressing. And if there is disappointment, allowing ourselves to complete that cycle of disappointment and recovery. And right beside it, he's moving towards the 3 of Swords, which is interesting. Now, the 3 of Swords in Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is a heart in a gray, rainy sky, just a heart with 3 swords stuck in it. And sometimes iterations of that card also have blood dripping from the swords or from the heart. Yeah? It's a bloody card. And it's a card usually of strife and loss. It's usually called the heartbreak card, you know? Card of emotional pain, sorrow, hurt, grief. All very emotional words and concepts for a card which is a sword, an air card, a card of mind and communication. So the way I have changed my understanding of this card is it's not the pain, but the understanding that we have gathered or we have learned from the pain, from the heartbreak, from the grief. It's not the wallowing in the grief or the feeling of the grief. It's the growth that happens, the understanding that we get from those experiences. Which moves us into the Four of Swords, which is that mental space of healing from it. So we have the wound, we have the hurt, we have the grief, which is perhaps right before the Three of Swords, and we gain an understanding about ourselves, about the world, about interactions with other people from that. And we carry that into the Four of Swords, where we recover and we heal in that understanding. So the Three of Swords is that space between the hurt and the healing for me. And it's interesting because in this card, in this deck, we see three swords, not in a heart, but in a cushion. The swords are piercing our resting place. So we're not in the resting portion yet. We're not there yet. We're not into meditation yet, but we're here with our new growth in understanding. And the next step might be to take the swords out and sit down and heal. And that's something else that we want to complete. To move through our understanding from the grief, so that we can get into the Four of Swords card, so that we can get into recovery and meditation and contemplation. So isn't it interesting how this figure holding 8 cups is moving away from society, carrying their emotions with them into the place of gaining new understanding of the Three of Swords. And that's what we want to complete. We want to complete that recovery from our hurt, from our pain, from our suffering, from our distraction, with our interactions with other people, so that we can open up in the next card. Does that make sense to you? Can you see how this man carrying their cups, this person carrying their cups into the Three of Swords, shows that journey? And that's something we want to complete. Or at least begin the completion process of. It may never be completely. But we want to get complete entering into that, perhaps. We have a second question. Let's look at that. This next question is a perfect question. What am I learning? So I get the idea of completing something so I can enter into the cycle of learning and then expressing, and then learning and expressing, right? So what am I learning? What am I learning? We've got 2 wonderful cards here answering that question. One is the Ten of Cups. The other is the Queen of Swords. Again, interesting, right? Cups and swords, emotions and ideas. A balance again. And the Ten of Cups is the card of divine love. The card of blissful relationships. The card of harmony, happiness, joy, and family. Now that feeling of family, whether it's actually mommy, daddy, children, or another kind of family. Mommy, children. Daddy, children. Mommy, children. Daddy, children. Friends. Our created families, our intentional families, our tribe, our peeps. Yeah? All of that can be encompassed in this Ten of Cups card. And so that blissful relationships with that family that we either were born into or we have created. It could be us with our furry companions, or our feathered companions, or our scaled companions. All of that is a part of this card. And it's that joy, that bliss, that harmony, that happiness. And some people look at this card and say, that is an unattainable goal. It's setting the bar too high. It's like expecting that all of us are going to be enlightened. And I can understand why some people believe that. But it's interesting. I've heard people say that, and on the other hand, look at the Ten of Pentacles and say, or the Ten of Discs and say, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, wealth, and I have enough, and I can share. They get the idea when it comes to the Pentacles, but they don't get the idea so clearly when it comes to the Cups. Being satisfied with the emotional experience that I have, and having enough to be able to share. That's what I understand as happiness and blissful relationships. Yeah. The Nine of Cups is the card of satisfaction, of being happy with who I am, where I am right now. That's an alone card. And so the 10 is moving from that into relationship. I'm happy with who I am, where I am, what I am doing, and I can share that with you. I can help support you with my satisfaction. I can shine my satisfaction around on you and help you uplift yourself. I can support your growth. I can influence you by the way I am expressing myself in the world. And that's what I'm learning. Which is an echo. Can you hear that echo of the oracle cards? Now, we open ourselves in nature, We open ourselves in nature or to other people and to growth, to learning from other people or from nature, from Sanshin. And we grow, we learn, we understand, we incorporate that, and we radiate that as we express our new selves in the world. That's just like this. It's just like this on the emotional level. We express ourselves on the emotional level out into the world, and we can't grab people by the collar and lift them up the emotional scale, but we can influence them up by radiating love and kindness. Which is interesting because recently, because I just heard a very, very interesting podcast by Colette Baron-Reid, and if you know her and know how to find her, maybe I'll put a link below. Yeah, she just did her first podcast with a brilliant Scottish doctor who was talking about kindness, the kindness effect. And listening to that podcast, it reminded me of a form of practice of meditation that I have done for a while, but haven't done that I used to do and had done for a while, but I haven't done for about a year, called metta meditation, which is translated to loving kindness meditation. And in that meditation, we first shower ourselves with loving kindness, and then we choose other people in our meditation to shower them with loving kindness. First, someone we actually love. Then someone we don't have any particularly strong emotions about, positive or negative. And then, if possible, we choose someone with whom we have a troubled or uncomfortable relationship, and then shower that person with loving kindness, with love and kindness. And then, if there's time and possible energy, we spread that out to the entire planet, for example. Yeah, so that's another expression of the Ten of Cups for me. So that's what I am learning. And what I just started practicing again recently, specifically last night. So, yes, what am I learning? First, the Ten of Cups. And then the Queen of Swords. Wonderful, wonderful card. And some people see her as a fairly negative card, and I don't see it that way. I don't see her that way. Now remember, her is just because this figure is dressed in women's clothes from this period of time. Okay, could be anything. Could be male, could be female, could be a non-binary person. But again, for convenience, call it this person a her. I am that her. I am the Queen of Swords a lot of the time. And so can you be the Queen of Swords whenever you want to be. Doesn't matter. Gender, no gender. Doesn't matter, right? So, Queen of Swords. Some people see the Queen of Swords as the person of sorrow and a widow sometimes. I don't see her, the Queen of Swords, that way. Unless perhaps she is turned upside down if I'm reading with reversals. Or the card is in a shadow aspect. But for me, the Queen of Swords is the card of independent thought. The Queen of Swords is a clear thinker and thinks independently and expresses herself independently. It's a card of unbiased judgment, having, again, clear vision, seeing the truth, being able to discern the truth. Again, remember that veil being lifted that we mentioned in the oracle cards? That's here too. Yeah? Seeing the truth, discerning the truth, clear boundaries. Also of direct communication. And it's in direct communication that we can teach other people verbally the best. Now, the best teacher is living our lives. The second best teacher is direct and clear communication. And that's what the Queen of Swords is to me. The Queen of Swords has judgment, can see the truth, can express the truth clearly and independently without regard to what other people think that she should think the truth should be. And that's what another thing we are learning. That is another element of what we are learning. We're learning how to radiate and express our love and satisfaction and kindness to those, to help influence them and uplift them. And communicate clearly because we see more clearly. The veil is lifted. Yeah? Just like in the Awakened card. Yeah? For the Queen of Swords, the veil is lifted and we see more clearly, and then we can communicate more clearly. I love how this spread this week is flowing. Don't you? We're ready for the third question, I believe, so let's take a look at that one. This card asks us to consider what would be perfect. Good question. What would be perfect? We've got two cards, another sword, another mind card, right? We've got the Page of Swords and the Three of Wands. So this time we've got fire and air together, and that's what would be perfect. The Page of Swords. We see a very typical Page of Swords kind of figure. It's very different from the Rider-Waite-Smith because it's a close-up view, perhaps a little bit more similar to the Morgan Greer, maybe in this cultural context, because it's close up. But we see a young, male-presenting human with a sword drawn, ready to defend themselves or others. But this is the card of new ideas and of curiosity. It's because it's that curiosity that allows us to receive new ideas, right? If we're not curious, we won't learn. But the curiosity is us being open to new ideas and then receiving new ideas. It's our thirst for knowledge, wanting to know. And that's what our curiosity springs forth from, right? If we're not thirsty for knowledge, we won't be curious. And then if we're not curious, we won't get the new ideas. it's also a card of new ways of communicating. And that's what would be perfect. We're open, we're curious, we're thirsty for learning. Open to learning, open to new ideas. That eternal beginner's mind. We talk about that beginner's mind, always be in beginner's mind. Well, that's the Page of Swords to me. And then, as we're open, as we get those new ideas, finding new ways of communicating them, and new ways of communicating what we already know, as part of teaching. Because as we teach, we learn. And then we have the Three of Wands, which is expressed a little bit differently in this card. We do see 3 wands. We see one person holding up one wand, but we don't see an ocean and ships out in the distance. Yeah? Still, I see for this card, expressed even this way, this one person holding the wand, they're moving forward. Yeah? You saw the feet are in a stance of not really standing still, but moving forward. It looks like they're walking. It was a photograph, perhaps. I mean, it's a painting, but the painting looks like a photograph of somebody mid-stride. It's a card of progress, moving forward. The adventurous course. Now, moving out into area that we don't already know. Now, there are times when we want to stay within the area that we are used to because routine is helpful for us. Now, it creates stability. But that stability is only good for us because it is our launching point for us to move into the unknown. If we only stay within the known, we begin to stagnate. Now, that stable base is our launching point. 2, that adventurous course, and knowing that we can return whenever we want. It's a card of action from intention. Yeah? We live our intentional lives. We flow with the powerful current of intention. We open ourselves up. Now remember, we're opening ourselves up to understanding from the non-physical and from the depths of our own selves. But we're also open to moving with the powerful flow of intention, right? And that flow of intention inspires us to do. Now, we didn't come here to sit in a chair and ride the ride. We came here to ride the ride and do and act and play and express and experience and then do some more from our point of, and feeling of being inspired. From our intentions. From the powerful flow of intention. It's also the card of expansion, because as we've gone out into this new, unexplored territory, as we've experienced the new, our boundaries grow. Yeah? We experience this new thing. We've gone out into this unexplored territory, and we grow from that. Now, this isn't the growth of the colonizer. It's our growth of our experience that I have now incorporated this new territory into my life experience, and I am different because of that. I have evolved because of that. Not because I have ownership, but because of experience and understanding and new knowledge and insight from the Page of Swords and the Queen of Swords. And that's what's perfect, right? We're open to new ideas and we communicate them, and we're open to flowing with our intention and acting and exploring and taking the adventurous path into the new, the unexplored, the unknown, so that it now becomes the known, and we grow and we evolve through that. And as we evolve, the course, the path of the current of our intention also increases and shifts. We place new things on the path of the flow of our intention. It's a wonderful card, isn't it? It's a wonderful set of cards. And that is really what would be perfect, I believe. Let's look at that fourth question now. We're ready, I think, don't you? This fourth card, this fourth question, what is clear to me? Perfect question, right? How have we arrived here? Now, we talked about the oracles. We had opening to nature, to communication and interaction with the non-physical, the sanshin. And as we absorb that, as we incarnate that, we express it into the world. We play our music in concert with others, which gives us new realizations, which teaches us as we teach. And we awaken. Because in our evolution, we notice the veil begins to thin or begins to lift. And we receive even more, sometimes unsettling information, more understanding, which disorients us sometimes a little bit. Yeah? The shaman, becoming a shaman, is a very disorienting process. But we know that we're also held and supported by the non-physical, by the divine consciousness, by the eternalness that we are as well. And so what do we want to complete? First, we want to at least move into the process of completion of leaving our heartbreak and our disappointments behind us and growing from them, learning from them, so that we can heal from them, heal from and through them. That's what we want to complete. And what am I learning? I'm learning that as I move through that completion, as I fully embody who I am, as I feel the satisfaction and love and kindness for myself, I can radiate that love and kindness out into the world to influence and uplift those around me. And my understanding, my vision also clears. The veil has lifted. I'm learning to see through the veil, my own way of seeing and my own way of understanding. And then I communicate with that as the Queen of Swords. And what would be perfect is that I remain the eternal student, the eternal learner, because that's what we all are. We are the Page of Swords. So I allow myself to stay in beginner mind with curiosity and the thirst for knowledge. And as I'm thirsting for knowledge, as I'm curious, I move into the world with the Three of Wands, and I move out adventurously into that unknown, following my path of intention and letting my intention inspire me to act. Acting from inspiration, the Three of Wands. So now, what is clear to me? What is clear to me are two queens. We've got two more queens here. We've got the Queen of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups. Queen of Pentacles, very ornately dressed Queen of Pentacles, right? The card of nurturing those around us, because we have enough. We have more than enough. So we can nurture others. It could be financially. It could be with material goods like food, something to drink, clothes. It could be nurturing them with our attention, with our time. It's the card also of practicality. Yeah? This is actually a very practical thing to do. It's the most efficient way of evolution. So it's practical. Does it sound practical to you? It truly is the most practical way to be in the world. It's a card of providing financially, materially, in some way. It could be with money, but other material resources. It's a card of being charitable and noble. And what is clear to me is that I am all that. And I have the resources that I need available to me to an abundance that I can share with others. So I can feel my opulence wherever I'm living. Whether I'm living in a studio apartment in the south of Market of San Francisco, or I'm living in a shack in the middle of some prairie on the plains of a tundra, whether I'm living in a mansion on Park Avenue, wherever, we can experience our opulence. And that can be clear to us, that we can experience our opulence. Because when we experience our opulence, our abundance, we are open to the powerful flow of intention and moving forward into the lives we want to live. Whatever that is, whether it's a new love, whether it's a new job, whether it's a new house, whether it's a relationship you already have and you want to deepen and you want to expand, whether it's an artistic creation that you want to create. Now, doing that from our feeling of abundance and our opulence is the best way. And then we radiate that onto others. We share with others. That's the Queen of Pentacles. And in a way, it's also the Queen of Cups, only in a different sense. The Queen of Cups is the compassionate one. It's the emotional one. Yeah? Instead of sharing material resources, the Queen of Cups shares emotion, compassion, empathy, caring. We care for those around us. We shower them with love and kindness. And as we do that, we heal and we grow. It's the card of nurturing emotionally. It's a card of warmth and tenderness. Now, a lot of people think of warmth and tenderness as fairly weak emotions, but they are not weak. They are not weak if they are fully embodied. Now, warmth and tenderness they are emotions of the strength of our being. Strength is not aggressiveness. Strength is assuredness. And when we are self-assured, we can be open and caring and nurturing and warm and tender, vulnerable, because we don't have to defend ourselves. We can be emotionally stable and intuitive. When we are open like that, we are also much more open to our intuition, because our intuition is connected to our emotions. And when we are closed off emotionally, we're closing ourselves off from the potential of being intuitive, the full potential of being intuitive. So that's what's clear to me. On this journey, what's clear to me is that I am the Queen of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups. I can nurture and be open with my resources and enjoy the resources that I have. I can be open with and share my emotions and be happy with and satisfied with the emotions that I have. And as I'm open like that, I'm back to receiving and sharing and receiving and doing and receiving and teaching. Does that make sense to you? I hope so. Because I think this is a very profound statement given to us by this tarot and oracle spread. Again, if you want to see the cards, who made them, what the names are, there will be a clip in just a moment. I'd love to hear from you. So, hit the like button if this was an enjoyable experience for you. Hit the subscribe button and click the bell so you get notification of when I upload videos. Share this with somebody anywhere that you think people would appreciate this information. And comment below. I really would love to hear from you. How does this make sense to you or not make sense to you? How have you experienced that cycle of learning and expressing and teaching and then learning more and then expressing and teaching? How has that affected you in your life? Or how have you noticed that in effect in your life? And friends, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.